Well, good morning. I'm on vacation for the week. At least till Sunday, probably Monday, or perhaps Tuesday. I'm going to ride my bike today. Yeah, things are going well. Reading a book, philosophy. I like philosophy, you know. Yeah, I was in the Barnes and Noble. I went to see Joker with my brother, and it was okay. When it comes to movies, I can see why a lot of people didn't like it because they expect something that they saw from the last one. But I think it depends on the angle that you look at it. When it comes to mental illness and how people in relationships with someone who has problems, how, like deceitful the character of Harley Quinn was. That was a good portrayal pretty much for the whole movie. Him thinking that he was understood and how she kind of fooled him like that and how people are like that, people have agendas and they often will do that. So in that aspect, that movie did a real good job on that, and maybe touching on like the social label that's been given. That was good. Of course, they kept it a secret, I think, that's a musical. Probably for good reason. Because maybe a lot of people might not have bought tickets if they knew it was a musical. Because they're not expecting it to be a musical. So, yeah, I can see why. But, social media and news articles always will try to go against the grain to try to get clicks. So the bandwagon media talking about how crappy the movie was, you gotta take that with a grain of salt too, So reading a book, How to Die, Seneca. One thing I noticed, like in Barnes and Noble, is like the philosophy section is very small. And I was thinking about it just this morning, just a little glance at it. And I'm like, yeah. And now I am not anti-woke and I'm not woke. Okay. Probably because I say that because I don't want to be that like virtue signaler, who's just trying to gain like social capital by like, oh, I'm not racist. That's kind of, I try not to be racist. And, obviously when it comes to extreme racism, I don't think that people outside of my color or race aren't any lower than me or any better than me. Obviously, I don't believe anybody deserves to be oppressed and be enslaved. Obviously. You know what I mean? So, those, you can check those easy boxes. I'm not mad because, you know what I mean? I don't think like that. But, on some microaggressions, yeah, I might still have some, maybe, it's just, at the end of the day, I'm not really categorized. That's, I guess, the reason why I need to disclaim that I'm not woke, but I'm not anti-woke. Just try to be a good person. I guess that's what the hell. I freaking lost my track of mind here. Lost my track of mind, man. Barnes and Noble. Okay, yes, here we go. in the small philosophy section. Yeah, if you want to control or have people conform to a way of thinking, yeah, you want to limit certain types of literature, especially literature that might enhance independent thought, to not conform. So, yeah, if you're a business who has the agenda of this, or having a very small philosophy section is a good idea. Yeah, I mean, definitely in that perspective, freedom of expression is important for freedom, because that's definitely how to control people, is to bait people. Social media, like that boxer. I guess she got her medals banned, but I mean, she was born the way she was born. She was born with a vagina. She was born with a vagina. Yeah, she failed the gender test. Well, she was born that way. She doesn't have a dick. So, I mean, now I'm not anti-choice. I mean, definitely there is a social and a biological component. I guess that kind of highlights that. What we've been taught is masculine is different than what you've been born with. And I guess in a way, pretty much that's the basic. If you have a penis or a freaking vagina, then therefore. And it wasn't artificially made later. Therefore, that's what you can choose. So, I mean, all the hate that she is receiving, well, she was born with a vagina and she has a little bit of a freaking whatever chromosome. So what? And I mean, and a lot of people are like hating on that person, and it's like she was born that way. She was born that way. You know what I mean? That's kind of crazy. And that's, sad to think that someone's born a certain way. I mean, yeah, superficiality wise, they're probably looking at how she looks. She does look masculine, she has that look, but what can you do? Strickland says, any average man's gonna be able to beat any champion woman. I don't really agree with that. I mean, everybody has a puncher's chance, but if a woman is strong and she's skilled in her trade, maybe punch to punch, maybe a male might win. But I mean, look at Fox Fallon getting her ass kicked against a woman in the cage. That happened, and that was like, whoa, what the hell, man? So I don't know. Definitely, when it comes to clickbait, social media, they like posting these controversial topics to get people stirred up, and everybody thinks everything's a choice. Ironically, you have the problem that boxer has, being born with a chromosome, because I guess in the second trimester, that's when the biological sex is assigned in the womb. I mean, it's different than when someone identifies. It's crazy. So I guess that's philosophy and thought. Getting away from belonging to a clique. And yeah, and the Seneca is thinking about death, how to die. You shouldn't be afraid of death. Which, yeah, I can see that. Now, a lot of people might think of death as a process, but really, yeah, I agree. Death is the cessation of all signals in the body, in my opinion. Yeah, that moment where it all ceases. Now, there's a process, I agree with that, but the cease is when death occurs. So, yeah, that's crazy that we can devote our whole time and life for that one moment where everything ceases. That's a waste of life, you know? That's a waste. Uh, that's a freaking waste of life. That's for sure. So it helps you realize and take some gratitude for life. Yeah, gratitude for that. But in that book, Seneca, I'm not done reading it yet, but it's like, oh yeah, why should you be afraid of life dying? It's trying to make it like shameful if you're afraid to die. Now, I take that with a grain of salt, man. There is a little bit of an implication if you're just totally welcoming death as freedom from enslavement, because if you're not afraid to leave, then therefore you're no longer attached. It's kind of like proximate karma with Buddhism. It's like how the moment right before death is that karmic relation matters, because then you're no longer attached. But if you really love life, you should be attached to it. You know what I mean? I'm on the fence about afterlife. I don't think I really think there is, but I'm not closed-minded against it. But you can't really prove that there's a life after death. That's just something in mind, There's nothing wrong with wanting to stay alive. You're kind of implying that you don't like life. Then you're pretty much freaking devoted to that last moment. I mean, that's crazy. Then you basically have freaking, what was life for you? If that's what you're striving for, and you know what I mean? You should want to live, Yeah, I don't agree with that aspect of Seneca's idea. I understand that if you can be more understanding about death and be more accepting of it, yes, you're going to have a better life. I totally agree with that, but I'm not into this idea that you should just commit suicide because it's better that way. I mean, that's kind of in a gist what he's saying. It's like, yeah, I understand you're enslaved to your attachment. But yeah, I don't agree with that part of it. It's just as virtuous to want to stay alive as it is to want to die honorably, which you should die honorably. But, I don't know. Just because someone's crying because he doesn't want to die, should you? Well, kind of like fat shaming. Ooh, we're going to die shame you now, because you're cowering because you don't want to live. You don't want to die. And now we're going to shame you for it. You know what I mean? That's just, crazy. It shows how luxurious we are as humans when watching these posts on coyotes attacking dogs and cats. And you got a lot of comments. And I don't think they're trolls. I think they legit believe this. We've invaded their territory. I'm not like, let's go kill coyotes. But if we don't provide incentive to fear us, they're going to walk through our neighborhoods unafraid like they do. Like I see them. They're not scared of you. And yeah, I've seen them carrying a cat walking right by me down the street midday time in a neighborhood. They're not scared. So maybe we shouldn't let them think that we're friendly. Doesn't mean we're going to try to kill them. But if you don't give them an incentive to be afraid, they're walking through the neighborhoods looking for easy prey. Invading territory. What are we supposed to do? Kill ourselves so the wild animals can live? What kind of loco logic is that, man? We're going to now self-impose population control because we've invaded the nature's animals, non-human animals. That's insane. And that is just because a lot of people have lived comfortably, not having to worry about their survival. Because we live comfortably. Go to the grocery store and get food and not really have to worry about where our next meal's coming from. So we can sit there and be all virtuous about how freaking, hey, dude, we've stolen the land from the coyote. You know what I mean? When nature's nature. And sad to say, part of nature is conquering and dominating other and territory. That's what animals do. That's what we do. We just like to try to play mind games of that's not what we do. And yeah, I mean, I definitely agree. We use dominance in a different way, which isn't based on necessity of life, I guess. Yeah, I'm not arguing that, but population control, when you talk about racism and correcting population, I mean, obviously, that's a major reason why we don't do it. Because even though we try to be non-racist, there will be a racism. There will be a political bias or a racial bias or whatever bias there is of who gets to be controlled and who doesn't. It's crazy. It's a crazy idea. So, I mean, yeah, I understand. People are like, oh yeah, if you don't have the money, you shouldn't have kids. But then you can't really do that. Because then we have a whole demographic of people who won't be able to reproduce. You know what I mean? It'll be stratified. I mean, in that way too. It's just, so we don't do it. I mean, it's like in a way, it's like a psychopath's logic. Yeah, we want to agree with. A psychopath would think that way. It's like, yeah, we're creating people who are like the Joker, who have been abused, who have a mother who likes to shame the child for whatever problems, and it creates the bad ego, and fucking now there's an adult and acting like an asshole going and killing people. So therefore, if we can prevent these poor people from having kids, then we will have better adults, which then, of course, there's just as many probably freaking bad rich people, as there are poor people. So, yeah, I mean, but that's the logic of freaking the psychopath, right? That's going to be like, yeah, man, we want the affluent to be able to reproduce, and the people who can't afford it not to, and therefore we're going to have population correction, and therefore have people who have the right state of mind, who think right, to be able to reproduce. Therefore we'll have a better society. So the racist bigots won't be around anymore. Therefore we can freaking have a better society. And so we will only have like the virtuous virtue signalers who will be around, and the world will be a better place. It's insane. It's not that hard to think about how crazy that is. Yeah. So death and enslavement. In this part, it talks about. It's an example of how people are enslaved who don't know how bad their life is. And sometimes some people think their life's good when their life sucks. Yeah, and when it talks about the slaves weeping over the death of their master, yeah, that's an example, I guess. Why would you cry over your master's death when you've lived a life as a slave? But they come by it honestly, right? Not everybody knows that they're a slave, in a way, in a form of enslavement, to sit there and weep the person who's oppressed you is an example of someone who was born into that system, who doesn't know something different. Yeah, I can, try to judge them, but you can't, because, the mind is the mind, It's kind of like the post office in a way, where, the supervisors are pretty much peons who think they're in charge. So, management, they like to have the supervisors go out there and give discipline, catching people, their carriers, doing petty shit. And they don't realize that they're peons because they think they're in charge, but they're not really. So they do the rat job, They're the rats, going out there catching people. They don't realize that they're the pawn, I guess. Yeah. And in an environment like that, where there's a lot of discipline to be given, a lot of micromanagement, you'll have those people that just love authority, they like doing those kind of jobs, and they'll go around and micromanage because they love authority, people. Yeah. You're not going to have wealth working a job like this. Really? You won't? I think you have to be an entrepreneur, pretty much. An entrepreneur is the way out of it, I think, to be honest with you. I mean, if you're going to be within the economic system, I'm not talking about, like, let's free yourself from worldly things like the Buddhists say, and therefore you're totally free. I mean, yeah, I can see that point. But if you're going to be a participant in the economy and make money, and you want to gain wealth, I think, yeah, I'm staying away from debt, obviously, and, being self-employed. Being able to create something that you can sell. You're not going to do it working a job that's going to cap you at 56 hours a week. If you're capped at that, you can't make any more money. You know what I mean? You're not going to escape. So, I don't know. I like the idea of focusing on enjoying life, but the idea that death is what you should want is ludicrous. But Seneca, I guess, was sick a lot of his life, and that can shape the way you think if you're sick all the time. But one thing is about being sick, when you get better and you heal, you feel so much better. That moment after you're not sick, you're like uplifted. That's a positive. So, I don't know. I'm going to make some Uber money this week. I have jury duty. I don't have to call until Monday night. So I'm happy about that. Gonna make some money. I'm gonna make some Uber money. I registered the car. I did 45% brakes after 95,000 miles. Got the differentials changed, all the fluids and the filters. So yeah, I have a good car with no problems. at 95,000 miles, so it's good. And I'm going to stay true to not spending my money foolishly. So I'll catch you guys later. Thank you.